We are over an hour away from the Halloween Horror Nights Hollywood panel. People have been camped out for like hours already.
The Phantom of the Opera.
Which way to the restroom?
The Rat Lady.
The original Billy puppet.
Bite and its wings are unfurling.
Okay, it is time for part 2 of Midsummer Scream here in Long Beach, California. It is time for the Halloween Horror Nights panel today. They're gonna be announcing stuff for Hollywood. Let the fun begin. All right, we're gonna go into the Hall of Shadows now. They got a Buzz Lightyear box here for a little photo op.
They got a Pizza Planet truck here, and Chucky's taking over.
They have a haunted car wash, tunnel of terror. They got a fun little 360 photo op. 360 action shot.
Why don't halflings plan for their retirement? Because they're short-sighted.
Here they have the Saw X experience. This is going to be a really bad torture device. I believe it like sucks out the people's eyeballs or something. Journey through the history of Saw. Be the first to face Jigsaw's newest trap. The original Billy puppet from the Saw franchise from 2004 up until 2023. They reused the same puppet. This thing has given many people many nightmares. I didn't realize Billy's shoes look like he can go back to Oz. We have the Magnum eye hole trap. And over here we have John Kramer's sketchbook from Saw X. And over here we have the reverse bear trap. And then one of the worst ones, we got the shotgun collar trap. And then this is going to be the new tape recorder from the Saw X film that's coming out this year. Have like the different posters, right? So 2, 3, 4, terrifying pig mask and cloak. And they have the trailer for the new film that's playing. And we have the poster for the new film. And over here it's going to be one of the new torture devices from the Saw X film. I believe in this one, he has to like drill out part of his brain or something. Behind the scenes, Ordinary Adventures thumbnail. This is how the magic happens. There's an escape room game where you're locked in this box. The temperature is gonna get hotter and hotter and hotter. They have a slasher throwing axe. Get the beanbags inside the Nutcracker, win a free ticket. That's happening. Okay. These are air fresheners. What is going on there? Right now at Brian Brain's studio. You guys are always asking about the shirt that I'm wearing. This is the print of Creature. You can buy the shirt back there, but they make great stuff. I've seen a lot of horror masks. I've never seen a Bruce the Jaws shark mask that you can wear. Oh my god. There's a company called Horgasm. You got the Crypt Keeper, cartoon Beetlejuice. We got the little Ash puppet right there. Winnie the Pooh, the Titty Twister, open dusk till dawn. Now if you spot a bar in a convention, you can probably spot these two people over here. You know what happens when we drink? We buy stupid stuff we don't need. So we got the Scary Movie s'mores. I got the Conjuring flavored cookies and cream. And on the back it says, warning, positively do not open. Kill our s'mores while watching a scary movie to experience pleasure beyond limits. Sure to tear your taste buds apart. So you can see Annabelle right there. All right, look at this Conjuring s'more. Cookies and cream.
Good as it looks. Yeah.
Well, it was like a homemade marshmallow. 10 out of 10.
It's a must.
They got all the big boys, but as horror icons, like the Beetlejuice one. Got Michael Myers. What's your favorite scary movie? They have a whole little Scream photo op over here. You got the phone, 911, the VHS cases, the Dorito bag and beer. We got Ghostface in the background. Then we have a Nightmare on Elm Street little photo op here. Freddy Krueger coming after you right there. Really cool. They recreated this stuff for the Mystic Museum. And then over here we have the Overlook Hotel. Which way to the restroom? We got a little towels to overlook the carpet, the fog. They have all these ghosts. So good. So good. Okay, we are over an hour away from the Halloween Horror Nights Hollywood panel. We're gonna get in line. People have been camped out for like hours already. There's gonna be thousands of people trying to get into this panel. We got the gold bat, so we should get in, hopefully. I just wanna make sure I get a good seat for you guys so you get to like see the stage and everything. Lord have mercy. Okay, all right, this is gonna be the front of the line for the gold bats. Let's see how far it goes. All right, probably like 100 people in front of us, but right here is gonna be the end of the line. There's movement now. About 15 minutes before the panel starts, they're starting to load all of us in. So again, that's all just standby waiting to get in. For the gold bats, we're heading in. Grand Ballroom.
Universal Studios Hollywood's Halloween Horror Nights. Will there be a glimpse of things to come this Halloween? Of course. Will there be a major reveal? You can bet your life on it. Here's the man with the sinister plan. All the way from Ireland, please welcome John Murdy.
Thank you. Without you, I'd probably be operating a puppet show somewhere in Dublin, you know, on Grafton Street. By the pricking of my thumb, something wicked this way comes. How about an announcement right out of the gate? We've had a long history of creating original Latin American themed horror content at Halloween Horror Nights. It actually goes all the way back to 2010. That was the first year we did La Llorona as a scare zone. And then of course we had the La Llorona mazes 2011, 2012, 2013 we teamed up with Danny Trejo to do El Cucuy. And then kind of the second phase began. We started working with Latin American film directors. It started with Robert Rodriguez on his TV series From Dusk Till Dawn. And then Guillermo del Toro doing Crimson Peak, and then 7 years. 7 years went by where we didn't really do that. You know, we moved on to other things, we started doing other opportunities, and then coming out of 2021, I noticed Plaza, the Universal Plaza, the way we themed that around Day of the Dead. I noticed everybody inside it, something in my brain just clicked that year, and I went, we gotta get back to this. This is what we should be doing. So it feels like it's time for something else. The legends and myths of Latin America at Halloween Horror Nights continues with Monstros, the monsters of Latin America. This is an all-new haunted house that features 3 infamous monsters, or monstros, which is Spanish for monsters, of Latin America. We'll start with our first one, and this is, I'll give anybody a penny if you can pronounce this name. Anybody? Tlalhupuchi. Tlalhupuchi. This is a character that comes from the Tlaxcala region of Mexico, and it's really interesting because it's a witch, but it's also a vampire. With any of these Latin American myths and legends, they're all passed down orally for hundreds of years. In fact, Tlalhupuchi, some people think the origins of this story go back to Aztec times. That's how old it is. But I'll give you the version that's the most common version, right? Because there are variations to the story. But in the most common version, anybody can be a Tlalhupuchi. Could be you, could be you, could be you. You don't know when you're a little kid that you're a Tlalhupuchi until you reach puberty, and then things start to change, as they do. And you become aware that you are in fact a Tlalhupuchi. As late as the 1950s, there was a particular doctor in Mexico who was trying to figure out why the infant mortality rates were so high in this particular region where this story originates. And he pulled all these death certificates, and he was doing his research and he was studying, and he noticed that cause of death, all the parents were writing on it, Tlalhupuchi, or witch. So that's what first brought the story to larger attention. The last known execution of a Tlalhupuchi was 1973. Monsters are real. But the most common one is a turkey vulture. And it flies to the house of its victim, sucks the blood out of them. It doesn't bite them like a vampire, it sucks the blood through the skin. And it leaves these telltale bruises and markings. Tlalhupuchi is the first of our monsters. Let's take a look at the character design for Tlalhupuchi. So this is our iteration of Tlalhupuchi. We kind of have 2 different versions going on here. Monster is La Lechuza. Some of you were right on the internet. Some of you, I think they're doing La Lechuza. I have no idea how you got that, but La Lechuza, also known as the Owl Witch. And this comes from all over Mexico, but it also comes from the southwestern United States, particularly Texas. And I'll give you again the most common iteration of this story. There's an old woman who lives in a village, the kind of old woman that, you know, people whisper about, and people become convinced that she's a witch, so they put her to death. But she comes back as La Lechuza. So she's a combination old woman and a witch. And there's one particular thing the La Lechuza does that's extremely creepy. And again, you can go on the internet and read all about this. There's like endless Reddit pages about people's encounters with La Lechuzas. But one thing that it does is late at night, if you're in your house and you hear a baby crying, the La Lechuza can disguise its voice to sound like an infant crying. And then when you go out of the house to see what's going on, it swoops down and picks you up. Two boys made this and stuck it up in a tree, and they kept moving it around to different trees. And this is a picture from the local newspaper when the police finally figured out what was going on. And that brings us to our third and possibly last monster, and that is El Silban. I bet you didn't figure this one out. El Silban, which translates to the Whistler, is from the Los Llanos region of Colombia, Venezuela, and it's another great story. Different iterations of the story, I'll give you the most common one. So there's a boy, which is really like a late teenager boy, living on a farm, fairly well off. He falls in love with a woman that the father does not approve of. And the father tells him, get rid of this woman, but he's in love and he doesn't get rid of him. So one day the father comes into the barn and he catches the boy and the girl, and he flies into a rage and he murders the girl, kills her right in front of the son. The son flies into a rage and murders his father. And then granddad comes home, sees what's been done, and he takes the boy out to the field, ties him to a post, whips him repeatedly with a whip until the flesh falls off his back. Then he takes like limes and like tequila and pours it in the wounds. And if that wasn't bad enough, then he sets wild dogs upon him that rip him to shreds. As this horribly mutilated guy is stumbling towards the woods, the grandfather comes up to him and hands him the sack of his father's bones, his murdered father's bones, and says, you are condemned for all time to carry the bones of your murdered father on your back. And he disappears into the woods and he's not seen again. And then eventually this creature comes out of the woods that is now known as El Silban. It's a towering creature. Some say he's like 10, 12 feet tall. Really, really skinny, carrying the bones of his murdered father on his back. And he's known for his distinctive whistle that kind of rises and falls. If you hear this whistle and it sounds far away, that means El Silban is actually really close. But if you hear the whistle and it sounds close, that actually means he's far away. So we'll give you a monstro fact about El Silban. Aside from the distinctive whistle that gives him his name, he is said to prey primarily on womanizers and drunks. But with womanizers, he rips them apart limb from limb, literally rips the bones out of their body and adds it to his sack that he has his father's bones in. We're going to start with the setting for this house. When we were thinking about where to set this particular house, being that it's a new original house, we wanted to create a really iconic place to ground the house in. So I started doing research. I did endless research, pulled hundreds and hundreds of images, but these two images in particular really stuck with me, and this is really what Brandy and Chris really latched onto as well. They're graveyards in Mexico. One's from Guadalajara, one's from Guanajuato, but I really liked in the long kind of rectangular image that Gothic Mexican architecture of that mausoleum. We thought that was a really cool element. And then the other one that I really liked was the idea of these sealed crypts that you see in the other image. So we created this place that we call the Cemetery of the Lost. And the idea here is that this is the place where every one of the victims of these monsters are buried. And it is a forsaken, condemned place that you do not go at night because the weather is always bad. It's always thunder and lightning here. Once your relatives are buried there, you never go back to visit them. This is another piece of inspiration. I love these mourning statues that we found in these cemeteries in Guanajuato and thought that was a really cool element. So I'm going to give you like the down view. This is the ground plan looking down, and that's a side elevation of the facade. You see the big like above ground crypt with the statue. But you see something else. And this is going to get back to that piece of key art at the beginning. You see the guy standing there holding a shovel? Okay. We thought it would be cool to create our own original character to add to this mix. And this character would be like the narrator of the experience. He is the caretaker of the cemetery, and when we were trying to conceive what he should look like, we were really thinking about like traditional for the Grim Reaper. So I pulled all this research. These are just a few of the images. Does anybody know what the photograph is? And don't say Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Does anybody know who that actor is? Very famous in a very famous horror movie. Max van Sydow, who plays the priest in The Exorcist. This is Max van Sydow back in the 1950s in a foreign film called The Seventh Seal, where he plays death. So we pulled that image. Then we pulled images from Aztec culture. We pulled images from the Middle Ages. This guy actually doesn't have a name. We never like officially named him. In our mind, it's kind of like those Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns. You enter this two-story mausoleum, and there's all these rotting skeletons of all the people that are buried inside that you have to go through. And I kind of snuck a pic the other day. I like the guy in the middle. I'm obsessed with him now. Really cool if we used artwork, which is the same artwork you guys just saw in the key art, but did it in the style of like crypt paintings that would introduce you to each different area that you're going to. So this is the crypt painting for Tlalhupuchi, and then we also have crypt paintings for the other two monsters as well, La Lechuza and El Sobon. And now we're going to get into their lair. Chris felt really strongly that he wanted to give each of these environments like their own unique statement or their own unique twist. So Tlalhupuchi's lair has these big talon marks, scratches all over the walls, and it's just filled with bird cages. So there's birds everywhere. Los Infantes, or the infants. You start discovering these bassinets. One thing I didn't tell you about the Tlalhupuchi is she's very particular. She feeds on blood, and she'll drink anyone's blood if she's desperate enough, but she really, really prefers the blood of an infant. That's like the sweetest tasting blood, right? When I was doing research, and I have to wonder, like, gotta be somebody in IT by now that looks at my search history, you know, and it's just like, I got a problem. But one of the things I was researching is carnivorous birds' nests. Because there's one thing certain birds do that's really, really messed up. When they kill an animal that they're going to eat, they use their bones to decorate their nest. They like adorn their nest with the bones of their victim. And I thought, that's awesome. And the bones of her victims. Here's from our secret offsite facility that you don't know about. I had to crop this picture too, because if I would have left the whole picture, you would have seen like Chucky. But these are the bodies that you see in the nest that Tony and his team had to create. And then you see the work they're doing to make these, you know, places where these victims' rotting corpses are being contained. All of that is done by hand. That's all done by our props and dressing team. Giant La Lechuza, like eating somebody in her nest. A video when we were building the La Lechuza, like the T-1000 ectoskeleton for her. The cardboard is a severed, arm/leg, and you can see it's taking a little bite, and its wings are unfurling. And I think in my treatment when I wrote it, it didn't have any of that. And they were just like, hey, we think we can do this, and they did it. As I was doing research, I came across this, pulquerias. And then next door is the carniceria, the butcher shop. So as you head into this pulqueria, we have a scene called Pulqueria Massacre. And basically El Saban has come in and he's just killed every single person in this joint, particularly the womanizers and the drunks. I didn't mention how he kills them though. This is the tweaked part. If you're a drunk, he sucks the alcohol out of their body through their navel. And that's El Saban. Now for the finale of this house, after you've gone through all these different layers, we wanted to do something really special. And again, it comes back to research. So I found this statue. This statue is in believe it or not, it's in, I believe, an El Saban theme park. It's this huge towering statue, but when I was looking at it, I thought, oh, that's cool, with the bones like spilling out of the sack. Because another thing El Saban does is, let's say he's walking through your village late at night, he might stop in front of your house. He might sit down that giant sack of bones, and then one at a time, uno, dos, tres. He'll just sit there and count every single bone to make sure he has them all. So we thought, after El Saban has gone through this village and killed like everybody in sight, his sack has got to be pretty big by this point. In fact, it's got to be enormous.
Oh my God.
And wouldn't it be cool if you had to go in to that sack of bones? And what would you find there? Just gonna have to wait and see. The sculpt from Muerte, and again it has a movable jaw so that it can actually lip sync to track. This is Patrick's sculpt for La Lechuza. So obviously we're doing him as a still walker in key scenes. And this is his sculpt for El Saban, and he sent me this really cool video. And this is the part that trips me out. It's like, I know it has hair, right? You can see it in the rendering. And I'm like, nobody's ever gonna see the back of his head. But Patrick still has to put in all the details because that's the way he is. And then, whoa. Okay, I know that's the mask. guess you'll have to wait and see. But wait, there's more! How about another announcement? We're gonna mix it up into a Scare Zone announcement. Because when you come out of this house, we're gonna keep everything going with this theme and take you to a brand new Scare Zone called El Terror de las Momias. Hey, you know, in the 1950s, in Mexico, there was these really specific horror movies they made about Aztec mummies. And, you know, there's like mummies fighting wrestlers and mummies fighting evil robots. But he wanted to do something with that idea, but do our Horror Nights original version. So that meant that Pat had to create like a multiverse of movies that don't actually exist. And he did. And I love that they did, not only did they do the movie poster, they did the lobby card for the movie. And these are gonna be used in the scenic, but they're also gonna be used in the video that's part of the Scare Zone as well. So the idea is here that they made this movie, The Mummy That Couldn't Die, and it was a huge hit. And they were really excited to make a sequel. So they made The Mummy versus the Undead Skeletons in classic horror movie tradition. If it succeeds once, make 20 of them. And then they got around to make the third film. You get the joke? Pat's like, I wanna call one of them Revenge of the Mummy, which is funny because I created a Revenge of the Mummy, you know, the ride in my previous life years and years ago. So they made Revenge of the Mummy, but by now, you know, the box office is not doing quite as well as the first movie in the series, but they gave it another go, and they did Escape from the Mummy's Crypt. By this point, they've kind of run they played out the thread for these mummy movies, and so they decided to go in a different direction, and they did Blood of the Skeleton Queen. And they introduced a brand new character, the Skeleton Queen, but the box office wasn't quite there, so they went, you know, that didn't do so well. Let's just bring back the Mummy and mash it together and do The Mummy versus the Skeleton Queen. But that didn't do that well at the box office either. So by the end, they just said, oh, whatever, just a Village of the Dead, you know, Village of the Undead. All of these pieces were created by, you know, Pat's creativity, Lucas's art, and there's a concept. Yes, Scare Zones actually do have a plot, but it's really simple. You gotta keep it like really, really simple, like a couple of sentences. So I'll give you my best shot at the plot of this Scare Zone. So somebody, not naming names, possibly the man with no name, dug up an ancient Aztec burial site or tomb in a village, and unwittingly or wittingly released a bunch of undead Aztec warriors upon the village. And they killed everybody in sight and turned all the villagers into the undead. And all of this is being proceeded over by who other than the Skeleton Queen, who's a stilt walker. What the heck is that? Project Eggplant. Note to self. Announcement delay. Delete from deck prior to... Oh, jeez. Sorry. Time for another history lesson. This is 1923. This is a photograph taken on the Universal lot in 1923. The studio, in the silent film era, undertook possibly the biggest production of its history up until that point. A production that required the construction of massive sets unlike anything they've ever seen built on the lot before, or frankly since, including a full-scale replica of a large section of the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris and an entire French village. When the cameras started rolling, the cast was so big that they had to invent the first PA system. That's what you see the director wearing the black hat standing next to, so that they could communicate with all of the crew members and all of the actors working on the production. The film starred Lon Chaney Sr., the man of 1,000 faces, as Quasimodo, and literally a cast of thousands. In this picture alone, there's 2,500 extras in this film. This is 1923. The film, of course, is The Hunchback of Notre Dame from 1923. And the reason why I'm talking about this and showing you all this is last year, around this time, I started thinking about, wow, next year's gonna be the 100th anniversary of Hunchback. And it actually came out in the movie theaters September 6th. So like right when it's 100 years old, Horror Nights is going to open. So it felt like we needed to pay tribute and homage to the films that started a franchise that we know today as the Universal Classic Monsters, right? Because without Hunchback, none of this would have ever happened. Once upon a time in Paris.
Paris, the city of light. But underneath her bustling boulevards, her noisy cafes, silence is king, and darkness reigns.
60 feet beneath the city streets of Paris, there is an empire of the dead. The bones of 6 million Parisians are buried there in an underground catacomb. But something else is down there too. The Phantom of the Opera. Far beneath the Palace Garnier, better known as the Paris Opera House, in his underground lair, the Phantom is still down there. And he's not alone. There's someone else down there too. Quasimodo, the hunchback of Notre Dame, has literally gone underground. Meanwhile, in London, the local authorities are searching for 2 doctors who are involved with unethical, illegal experiments. The first doctor is Dr. Jack Griffin, better known as the Invisible Man. The second doctor is Dr. Henry Jekyll, whose experiments have led him to embrace the darker side of his nature, known as Mr. Edward Hyde.
We dead welcome you to our world of shadow, knowing soon you will be one of us.
Prash's illustrations here. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Now I know what you're thinking. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde isn't a Universal monster movie. Au contraire. It is. We made a silent version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, like before the studio even came west and became Universal Studios Hollywood. It was what was called a 2-reeler in those days. 2 reels of film, 26 minutes long, silent film. So we thought we should bring Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and fold him into the Universal monster family because he was literally the first monster we ever did at Universal. What is that? There's a little booth, and then there's this big, huge blank thing. What that is a giant-sized reproduction of an English-language French newspaper, and where you see the blank spots, both on the facade where it's a different color, and also on that graphic, that's where the illustrations that I just showed you go. It's a whole pre-show we're creating to help tell the story before you go inside. And again, people on the internet, this is a ticket booth, it's a ticket booth. It's not a ticket booth. It's a French newspaper stand. Sitting behind that is an animated skeleton figure that we call Madame Squelette. Squelette is French for skeleton. So we thought, oh, it'd be cool if one of the dead, one of the 6 million dead that are in these catacombs is actually telling you this story. So that's the voice you heard that I was playing earlier. She's narrating the story, setting it up for you. Lucas's artwork is changing on the newspaper, so we get to do a little bit of a pre-show before you go inside. Madame Squelette also exists as a physical character, but when you're inside the catacombs, she's like back to her mortal state, a character we call the Rat Lady. The idea is that this is a woman that's down in the catacombs, you know, scouring for any food she can find, so she's literally eating rats, and she has a very advanced case of smallpox. This is like an hour-and-a-half long makeup. It's all prosthetic makeup. So this is in the catacombs, and we're in the middle of scenic props and dressing, but Chris really went for it to recreate that ossuary look. 10 years ago, 2013, I met Slash at Halloween Horror Nights when he came to see our Black Sabbath house. As soon as we came out of the house, he just turned to me and he was like, I want to do this. Like, how can we work together? And so he started doing music for our houses years and years ago. It started with a house called Clowns 3D. We started getting into Universal Monsters. Slash has done every single score, so that's now 5 full scores that he's done. We're going to play you one track from the new score for Universal Monsters Unmasked. It's a track called Silent Screams. And people have been asking me on Twitter, and you know, hey, can we see what the Bride of Frankenstein looked like? So I brought this with me. I just thought you might enjoy this. This is a time lapse that Pat McGee shot of the Bride of Frankenstein's makeup. So it was full prosthetic makeup to get that burned look. It's probably an hour in the chair, a little bit longer. And I was thinking, it's such a shame that nobody got to see that, right? Seems like you should get an opportunity to see that. We're gonna do a little something. We've been doing more and more of what we call these character interactions, just like places where you can discover a character where you normally wouldn't find one. So keep your eyes peeled this year at Horror Nights. You might just run into the bride. It takes a village to do this, just like it takes a village to do Midsummer Scream. So thank you to everybody in Midsummer Scream. Thank you all.
Okay, that is a wrap of Midsummer Scream 2023. Let's go back to the office and talk about everything.
Okay, now guys, we're back at home. I had a blast at Midsummer. Now that Halloween Horror Nights Hollywood panel was insane. It was over an hour long. I trimmed it down to like 15-20 minutes. There's a lot of other stuff that they packed into that panel. I loved learning the different backstories and details. We did get to do an interview with John Murdy. That'll be coming up in a later video. But Midsummer Scream is amazing, and you need to put it on your bucket list if you're a horror fan. They do a Halloween Horror Nights panel there every single year. It's like the last panel of the day, the big grand finale, the Hall H Marvel MCU panel.
panel was like the HHN panel for Midsummer. So guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button. If you have not already, hit the subscribe button, join the family.
I love the family.
Because I'm going to keep you up to date on all things Halloween Horror Nights and Universal Studios around the country. I love you all, and I'll see y'all very soon.
Which way to the restroom?
All edit and no play makes Peter a very dull boy.
Red blue.